Christopher Columbus did not discover America. Many of these pre-Columbian explorers might have come from Africa. Africans had ships. In fact, they had 4 kinds of vessels. At least a dozen explorers, including Constantine Ravenous, reported seeing blacks upon reaching the New World. In fact, these men came from a totally black village that was 2 days' journey away, and he figured that these blacks had come from Ethiopia at a much earlier date. In the years after Columbus discovered America, in 400 years, 20 million Africans were stripped from the coast of Africa, half of them dying in transit for slavery. And at the same time, within 5 years of Columbus's arrival in the New World, 90% of the indigenous population had died from disease or murder.
This is a small extract showing evidence of Africa discovering America. What you are about to hear will shock you. Evidence suggesting that Africans may have reached the Americas before Columbus. Let's watch the rest of the video.
What I'm about to say is going to upset some people right next here. Christopher Columbus did not discover America. So anyway, there were actually many other mariners before Columbus that discovered America as well. Decades earlier, even eons earlier, many of these pre-Columbian explorers might have come from Africa. So the first scientist to promote this possibility was Leo Wiener. Between 1920 and 1922, he published an extensive 3-volume piece called Africa and the Discovery of America. He pointed out that Columbus himself was aware that African mariners had preceded him. In his diary of his second voyage, Columbus tells of how the natives of Hispaniola actually had given him gold-tipped metal spearheads that they said were brought by black-skinned people who had come in large boats from the south and southeast. So what's interesting about that, so upon returning to Spain, is that he actually took the spearheads and he sent them away and they had them assayed, and it turned out to be that these spearheads were covered in this metal, this alloy that the inhabitants called guanin, and the metallurgists actually found out that this was an alloy of 32 parts. It was like 18 of gold, 6 of silver, 8 of copper, which matched the metal used in spearheads made in Western Africa for thousands of years, as carried by medieval African warriors, including the Mali and the Moors. The West Africans even called this metal guanine, the same name used by the natives of Hispaniola. Yeah, so on his second voyage, which was 10 times larger than the first, Columbus went on a frantic but unsuccessful island hopping trip to find gold and spices. He carried along several natives from his newly discovered San Salvador, which the inhabitants called Guanahanvi. Another island that the natives pointed out, which was really large and was called Soameto. Now, Columbus continued going around whimsically renaming every island he could find, but Leo Wiener, being the curious person and the linguist that he was, and the etymologist, he couldn't help noticing that the origin of these many place names and botanical names in Mesoamerica actually sounded distinctly like other languages in Africa, particularly Bantu and even Arabic. Wiener and numerous other botanists have also puzzled over the presence of certain plants that predated Columbus but originated in Africa. For example, the calabash bottlegourds. Now, this is a species originally from West Africa, where they were well cultivated in America before Europeans arrived, even long before they existed in Indonesia or Polynesia. So, in fact, the Pacific was the last place that bottlegourds actually reached and expanded. So how do these plants and languages and other cultural elements get to the Americas? Well, Africans had ships. In fact, they had 4 kinds of, unbelievable. They had a shipload of vessels. So in fact, they had 4 kinds of vessels. And Nubian pottery, this is an example of Nubian pottery with a painting on it that shows a long-hold pottery art that shows either a long-hold boat or a papyrus raft or a hauled-out canoe. And then this other painting beside it is from, the first one was from 3000 BC, and this is a bird's eye view of an oared riverboat in Chad, and it dates from 3500 BCE. Now, the Africans of Guinea also had dugout canoes hewn from these monumental trees on the coast there. In 1500, it's just a few years after Columbus's voyage, the Portuguese captain Pacheco Pereira wrote, "In this country can be found the largest canoes made of a single trunk. Some are so large that they hold 80 men." Now, the West Africans were known to lash two dugout canoes together, side by side, and no one questions the seaworthiness of a similar type of Polynesian catamarans. Now, Islamic historian Amir Hajib reported that voyages west from Mali were happening in the year 1311, just 150 years before Columbus. Now, when he asked the Mali emperor, shown here incidentally, holding a globe of the world made of solid gold, asked him, well, tell me about this rumor about Atlantic travel. And he said that his predecessor had commissioned an expedition with 200 ships filled with men and a similar number with gold and water and enough provisions for 2 years. And he said, go out and find something. And if you don't come back, so you find something or you run out of food. And unfortunately, only one ship returned, and the captains told the emperor that we sailed for a very long time until we met with what seemed like a river with a strong current flowing in the open sea. I was the last ship, and I turned where I was and did not enter the current. The others disappeared. I do not know what became of them. So, well, this story seems to describe the trade wind-driven equatorial current, or the Canary Current. At least a dozen explorers, including Constantine Ravenous, reported seeing blacks upon reaching the New World. In fact, in 1513, Spanish explorer Vasco Núñez de Balboa, when Balboa was there, he said he met members of a tribe of Ethiopians in Panama. And according to Balboa's log, these men came from a totally black village that was 2 days' journey away. And he figured that these blacks had come from Ethiopia at a much earlier date. There are numerous pre-Columbian figurines with striking similarities to ancient African artwork, and they've been found in Central and South America. In southeastern Mexico, there are 18 rock statues of heads up to 11 feet tall that are facing the ocean, looking east. Now, archaeologists call them the Olmec colossal heads after the people that carved them. And they were produced for 50 to 200 years and date from at least 900 BCE, when they were mysteriously buried for some reason. So now think about it. It took enormous effort to quarry these. The smallest one was 6 tons, so 6 to 50 ton blocks, to quarry them and carry them 75 miles away from the quarry, and then carve them and then erect them. These people that they modeled them after must have been important. Whoever they were, they must have been important to be remembered or obeyed or worshipped. Well, Jose Megler Serrano, the archaeologist who first uncovered them, he pointed out that facial features look amazingly like African blacks, and they all display distinctive headgear or protective helmets. Now, however, some people think that these are actually the facial figures of overweight babies. And then still others find it easier to believe that instead of Africans, those depicted or responsible for these sculptures, and as well as the Mesoamerican pyramids, were not African Americans, but dun dun dun. So why is it that so many people have never heard of this alternative of American discovery by the continent's nearest neighbors? So, I mean, look at how close this is. I mean, white people don't think that you could go this is closer compared to more than twice the distance that Columbus sailed. And so very few Americans know this. And why is this? So having examined textbooks throughout for years, up until 2018, James W. Lowen says that although some books cite the alternative possibility that Vikings, Norse, or even Irish may have reached America first, not one textbook, old or new, mentions the West Africans. So whether or not you give any credence to this admittedly controversial Afrocentric theory, it's obvious that Columbus was not the first to discover America, but the last. So why did he make such an indelible mark on Western people's minds? Well, conquest may have a lot to do with it. The story of Columbus remains the most widely accepted version of American discovery, most likely because it was the most recent, the most well-armed, the most documented, and the most similar in appearance to the authors of American textbooks. And one other thing that should be pointed out here is that in the years after Columbus discovered America, in 400 years, 20 million Africans were stripped from the coast of Africa, half of them dying in transit for slavery, who knows how many fleeing inland. And at the same time, within 5 years of Columbus's arrival in the New World, 90% of the indigenous population had died from disease or murder, 90%. So the fact is that leaves few people to have a written or memory or an oral history of the seafaring of their African discoveries.
History is full of hidden truths, and this one changes everything we thought we knew about America's discovery. What do you think? Did Africans truly reach the Americas before Columbus? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more eye-opening stories. Watch this video next. I am sure you will love it.